parents warned me not to look out the window at night. I just discovered the horrifying reason why. Ever since I was a baby, my parents always told me, don't look out the window at night. I always asked them why, but they would just shrug it off with a creepy smile. As I grew older, I stopped questioning it, but I just never could have guessed the horrifying secrets my parents were hiding. Everyone in my town also followed this weird tradition, so I thought it was normal. That was until I went to college and noticed that none of the other kids were like this. So during Christmas, when I went to my parents' house, I remember them telling me not to look out the window. I gave them a smile and a small chuckle before telling them I wouldn't. However, curiosity struck me the moment they left the room. As I lay in the dark, I came to a decision. I was going to look out of the window. Just as my hand came to the sheer white curtain of the guest room, I paused. My mind flashed to that one time when I was 12. My parents were talking in the kitchen. I was home with the flu and was about to make my way to the sink for some water, but I stopped at the doorway. I hid behind the wall, peeking my head out from the doorway just an inch. My mother was crying and my father was holding her and rocking. That poor little girl. I feel horrible for her family, whispered my mother. My father just nodded and continued holding her. I went back to my room after that. Several hours later, my dad came up to my room with several pieces of wood and boarded up my windows. "What are you doing that for, Dad?" I asked him. "Oh, it's nothing. Just safety reasons," he replied. I learned at school the next day that a little girl was found dead the previous morning, the window broken and curtains torn. I snapped back to the present. My hand drew back from the curtain. I shook my head, cursing myself for being so weird. What was the worst that could happen? It was just a window, it couldn't hurt me, right? As I reached my hand out again, my instinct was telling me to stop. My gut twisted as I reached nearer and nearer. Just as I touched the curtain, a painful howl came from the forest surrounding the house. I flinched back, deciding to just lay down and try to get some sleep. I forgot how hard it was to get sleep in my hometown. Every night, coyotes howled for hours everywhere in town, or at least I thought they were just coyotes. The next night, I woke up in a cold sweat. I glanced over at the alarm clock next to my bed. It was midnight. I groaned and sat up in bed. A low growling sound from outside of my bedroom window. I thought back to last night and decided that I had made up my mind about looking out. I thrusted my arm towards the curtain and pulled back hard, almost ripping it away from the rod. I flattened myself against the wall next to the bed for a moment before I put one eye in front of the window. I immediately regretted my decision as I heard claws clacking up the house. I flung myself out of bed, tumbling on the floor. I stood up and got back up on the bed. I stuck my face closer to the window as the clacking got closer and closer. It suddenly stopped for a second before the most terrifying creature popped up from outside, emitting a horrible shriek as it did so. I can never forget its face, the way the hollow eyes oozed some kind of black substance, like tar, and the way its lips were pulled back into a gruesome grin, the teeth blood-stained and razor-sharp. It looked like it had 4 limbs, its front 2 slamming on the glass and pounding. As I was frozen in front of the window in terror, my parents burst into the room. My father held a shotgun. He marched up to my bed and yanked me away from the window. He pointed his shotgun at the creature, shooting a bullet at it. The thing scrambled away, leaving the window almost completely shattered. "Damn it, son, it was a simple task. Just don't look out the window. How hard is that?" My dad shouted at me. I wasn't processing his words. I was sitting on the floor, arms and legs splayed everywhere in utter shock. What the hell had I just seen? My mother ran to the bedroom door. She had tears in her eyes. "Is everyone all right?" she asked. "Yeah, we're fine. We still gotta get that creepy effing monster, though." "Nathan, get up. We got some work to do," my dad said. I got up as soon as I could. My dad thrust the shotgun into my arms and marched downstairs. He opened the basement door and descended, coming back with a machete and some kind of spray bottle. He sprayed the liquid onto the machete before walking to the front door and wait. "Dad, what are you doing?" I asked, confused. I was just traumatized, and now my dad is waiting at the door, machete in hand like he was about to kill someone. Instead of a response, my dad just hushed me. The house was quiet for several seconds before a loud banging and howling came at the front door. We heard a rip, and we knew the screen door was no more. The wood of the interior door started to splinter, and I took a few steps backward. My dad glared at me. "Nathan, now is not the time for this. Point the goddamn gun and get ready to shoot." I aimed the gun at the door, trying to find the spot where the howling was coming from. The door was strong, but it wasn't indestructible. The creature burst through the door, and I pulled the trigger in a moment of terrified panic. My dad knelt down and brought his machete down on the abomination's head. The howling ceased, and my mom rushed forward with a tarp to cover the spot where the door was destroyed. "Honey, are you okay?" my mom asked for the second time that night. She came up to me and kissed my cheeks, as if to make sure I was still there. She went over to my dad and did the same. "We're okay, both of you, get in the basement. I gotta clean this up." I asked, "Basement? Why the basement?" Everything was going by at the speed of light, and I couldn't help but question everything that was happening at the moment. "Let's just get in the basement. Your father needs to clean up," my mom said, grabbing my arm and pulling me to the basement. We sat on the couch down there for what seemed like hours before my dad came in and put the machete up. He sat on the chair in front of us with an exhausted sigh. The three of us sat in silence for a few minutes. In that time span, my brain was able to come up with a coherent sentence. "Dad, what was that thing?" He just looked up at me, eyes dark, and said, "Where do you think that howling came from?" My school got shot up, but I'm the only one who remembers it. There was always something unusual about my classmate Carter. He was always quiet and kept to himself. He fit the stereotype of a typical school shooter. I wish we could have become closer friends. Maybe this horrifying situation could have been avoided. In middle school, Carter was the silent, emo kid who made dark jokes every 4 seconds. In those years, most kids were the same, but Carter was on a whole different level. Except, he literally got beaten to a pulp every other day. The sad part was that nobody ever helped him. The few times I tried to report what was happening, the teachers told me they'd look into it, but nothing ever happened. I just never could have expected Carter to go down this horrifying path. I remember the first time he tried to commit unalive. Apparently, he'd been planning it for months and brought a rope to school with him on the excuse that it was for a project. When I saw him leave with his backpack for the bathroom, I got a bad feeling and asked if I could go too. I was the one to talk this kid down from unaliving himself on a railing right outside the school's bathroom. And sadly, it wasn't my last time doing so. He tried 3 more times throughout middle school, and I tried to tell people, but nothing came of it. It was as if nobody cared for him in the slightest. Maybe that's why he did what he did. High school only got worse for him after that. I remember on the first day of school after summer break, he gave me a smile in the hall. This was odd, he looked better, happy even. I found out later that he'd gone to therapy throughout the summer and had been working out. But I remember later, seeing that same depressed, dejected expression plastered on his face later on, after having milk poured into his backpack and his hoodie. I had tried to go over and help him clean it, but he gave me a weak smile and told me not to worry about it. Every time something happened, I could see him reverting further and further into the boy he used to be. Yesterday morning, he texted me that we didn't have school that day. I'd been confused, seeing as he hadn't texted me in over a year, so I asked my mom, who told me that yes, there was school, and that I was going. I texted him back telling him what my mom told me, and waited to see what he said. He left me on read. Even more confused than before, I decided to brush it off and get ready. That was probably the gravest mistake I'd ever made. He wasn't in our first period class. I was confused at first, seeing as I'd told him that school was being held today, and that he had to be there for the test, but figured he just didn't want to come and stayed home to study for an extra day. Halfway through the Pledge of Allegiance, the office lady with the most boring voice imaginable stopped talking with a small gasp. We heard the rustling of movement in the background, and then a concealed bang. There was a cry of pain and then another 3 shots, then ragged, gurgling breathing coming in through the loudspeaker. We, the overtired, overworked, and pessimistic high school students that we were, chuckled at what we thought was just a stupid joke designed to scare us. It was October after all. But after a few more moments, there were a few more shots and a few more screams. We heard the faintest, last-breath-tinged voice of the woman over the loudspeaker one last time. Active shooter, code red, call 911. To say that pandemonium broke out would be an understatement. Mr. Wayne quickly turned off the lights and shoved us all into the corner of the room. We sat there, huddled, while people texted their parents goodbye. I was no different. My dad didn't talk. I think he was at work or something and didn't have time to look at the messages, but I wondered if he watched the live broadcast of the thing. I put my phone in my hoodie the minute I heard a shot from outside our door, and I closed my eyes as if it would make it all go away. Girls were crying beside me, and the other guys in my class were freaking out. But the moment I heard the door to the classroom beside us being kicked in and the screams of students cut off by gunshots, an eerie calm washed over me, and I stood up, pushing the desks to blockade the door. A couple of other guys and our teacher caught on and helped me out, retreating back to our spot when we finished. The footsteps thumped nearer to our door with each slow, agonizing second. The door handle shook as the shooter tried to use the conventional way of getting in, but after that proved fruitless, he started trying to kick his way in, like he did the last room. A girl a couple of feet away from me sobbed about how she didn't want to die, and a couple of kids had their phones out, recording. I thought to do the same, for evidence, and pulled out my phone. After a couple seconds of kicking, I heard a frustrated yell outside of the door. It sounded so familiar. And then the gun clacked against the window. The eye threw the scope aiming directly next to me, and the trigger was pulled. The bullet flew past me, skimming my ear and lodging in the forehead of a guy named Chris, blood pooling all around his girlfriend's legs. I remember looking through the door's window as the scope came down off the guy's face and meeting Carter's eyes. Everything was so numb. I couldn't even feel the blood in my ear. His expression darkened when he saw me, and he took one more shot, one that would hit the girl sitting next to me. Then he ran to the next classroom. I was frozen. I didn't know how to move, and yet my camera stayed in place, having caught every single moment of the boy's death in his girlfriend's arms, and all of my utter fear the moment I saw Carter. Later, as we were being led outside by the SWAT teams, I took a look around, peering into the classrooms out of sheer morbid curiosity. I regretted looking. It was an absolute massacre. Teachers, students, dead in a place where they should be safe. My parents stood outside, holding each other and looking desperately, tearfully for me, their son, to come out, dead or alive, seeing that look of pure relief on their faces the moment they saw me. Afterwards, I got asked questions by the cops. "What do you recall?" they asked. I gave them my video. They then asked, "Did you know the shooter?" I told them, yes, it was Carter Levi. That night was spent mostly at the police station, but my parents got me out of there in time for them to take me home and make me dinner. I couldn't eat it. The metallic smell of blood and sweat, and the primal fear still lingered in my nose and on my skin and in my mind, so I told them that I wasn't hungry and that I needed to shower. The news said that there were 32 casualties. They detained Carter and had him in custody. He would be awaiting trial for a little while at least. After eating a meager dinner of half a piece of fish and water, I said I wanted to go to bed at around 11 o'clock. Seeing as I was one to stay up for as late as I humanly could, my parents were concerned, but put it up to the shock. I went to bed with tears in my eyes and fell into a fitful sleep, plagued with dreams of death. The next morning is where things get odd. Well, odder. The next morning, my alarm went off as usual. I went to silence it as there definitely wouldn't be school today with everything that had happened and rolled over, but then my mom came in. She told me, "Lucas, you're gonna be late for school. Get up." I looked up at her with confusion. I wondered why she was making me get up, and wondered for a moment if everything was just a bad dream. But then I brushed my hand across my ear and winced, looking down at my raw palms. Nope, Definitely not a dream. Not wanting to look weird though, I got up and got dressed as normal. I couldn't shake the feeling though that I just couldn't be at school. I couldn't be there. The blood that stained the walls, the corpses had to still be here. It was a crime scene. But even so, my mom drove me to school and dropped me off, kissing me on the cheek like everything was normal. I walked slowly into Mr. Wayne's classroom, looking around fearfully. Kids were sitting down working on whatever was on the board, and it looked like a full house of students except for one. The guy who'd been killed yesterday, Chris, wasn't there. It's not like he had an empty seat, but more so that he didn't have a seat at all. I saw Carter sitting at his usual desk right next to me, and he looked up, his eyes full of knowing. I hoped he didn't know I knew too. The girl who'd gotten shot in the arm yesterday now looked good as new, smiling at me with a faint blush covering her cheeks. "I can't believe you actually bombed the test that badly," she giggled, a hand coming over to cover her mouth. I chuckled along with her for a moment, confused and afraid. I asked her, "Do you happen to know where Chris is?" She got confused at this, then said, We don't have a Chris in our class. You must be thinking of something else, sorry." This caught me off guard. I looked over at his former girlfriend, and she was talking with her friends, even flirting with one of the guys in her group, without a care in the world. What in the hell was actually going on here? The classroom fell into a sea of low murmurs, and I decided to block it all out, trying to reset my brain for a moment by listening to music. I felt a hand on my shoulder and flinched, hard. I looked up and Carter pulled back when he saw the fear in my eyes. His own eyes narrowed and he peered at me analytically. His final words haunted me forever. He told me, "You know, don't you?